You are now listening to the Shift Training Show, where we're focused on positively impacting the quality of human interaction. I'm your host. My name is Flip.
My name is Vaughn. I'm your co-host. And today we'll be doing a 3-part series in regards of relationship.
All right. So part 1 today, what are we going to be covering?
We are going to be covering part 1 is modern dating and attraction. And the second part of that is compatibility and choosing a partner.
Okay. All right. So that's what we got for part 1. All right. So we're taking some questions, did a little Q&A research. So thank you for everyone who was willing to share those questions with us. We look forward to answering them. Hopefully you'll enjoy this episode and some of our potentially spicy feedback.
All right. Let's begin with the first question. So this is question from Melanie and Jeanette. So I kind of like put them all together because they're very similar. So the question that they have people forgotten what dating means and replace it with situationship?
That's an interesting one. Vaughn, why don't you go first?
Okay, so I think most people haven't forgotten what dating means. I think that it becomes rare nowadays to see individuals who want a real relationship. I think they want the benefits of connection in a relationship. However, they don't want that exclusivity, that long-term commitment. They just want that convenience. And I think it's becoming rare nowadays, especially the rise of social media, the dating apps, where you could just swipe to the right, and if it doesn't work, you could just easily go to the next one.
Yeah, I think that presents a challenge because the idea of dating is basically the process of courtship. And I think that in the process of dating, sometimes people are looking for that commitment, which is actually kind of the last step in dating. The whole process of courtship is still in itself trying to get to know somebody / win their attention / prove you're credible, show that there's a reason for them to commit to you versus, oh, we're dating, so we should be committed to each other. Maybe we were both committed to the process of dating and seeing where it goes. Maybe we're both committed to jumping straight to a relationship and we're testing the relationship, and that's what we think dating is. So when it comes to that, it's like really understanding what the definition of that is. And I think that when you don't have clarity in regards to like what is to be expected in the dating situation, you end up in a quote unquote situationship. And I think that is that's kind of the consequence of when people don't understand what dating is supposed to be.
Yeah, I think that situationship happens when the desire comes first before clarity. And
yes.
This goes back to this is related to our second question from Daryl. His question is, does courtship still exist?
I would say yeah, but it's dying, it's rare. Courtship in itself is a process that requires tension. And like you mentioned before, where, we want things to be easier or we want a particular desire to be fulfilled fairly quickly with little friction, that makes it harder for the process of courtship to play out, because courtship itself involves friction. It involves delayed gratification, involves having to wait, not knowing and being unsure. And sometimes that makes people react or respond in a way that could just dissolve the whole process of courtship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think courtship nowadays has become rare because I believe that they reward speed and convenience nowadays, that courtship starts to, slowly dissipate and only happens for those individuals that are disciplined and willing to go through that process of courtship.
Yeah, I think if you think about it, it's kind of something along the lines of, think about back in the day where it's like, okay, you have to send a letter. You have to wait. How would you easily get to someone's house? How would you figure out where they live and what? Like, there's a whole set of things that would take time for you to even begin to do, quote unquote, the peacock dance, peacocking or anything to get the ladies' attention and to be able to do that. So for guys in particular, I would say, the process has been expedited due to like the nature of apps and being able to just quickly communicate. And at the same time, the other half of that is if it's not appreciated. So like if courtship in itself, that let's say romantic gestures or anything like that, if it's not really appreciated, then men are less likely to do it if they don't see that it's appreciated, right? We're pretty simple, we're pretty straightforward when it comes to, oh, this is valuable, this is what works, okay, then we will do this. But if that doesn't seem to be the case, then it makes it easier for it to kind of die out. So that's a shared responsibility between the men and ladies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this also reminds me how courtship is done in the Philippines. The man would go up to the girl's house and they would start, singing with the guitar with a group of people, a group of friends. And I thought that was pretty cool. I was glad that I had that experience, because nowadays it's just courtship just happens so quickly nowadays.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. And the third question that we have is from Natalie. Shout out to Natalie. And her question is, why is it easier for women to open up emotionally compared to men? And follow-up question to that is, how can men learn to open up their hearts?
Sorry, the sirens.
We're out here in the wild.
Yeah. So can we hear question number 3 one more time?
Yeah, let's repeat this question from Natalie. Her question is, why is it easier for women to open up emotionally compared to men? And a follow-up question to that is, how can men learn to open up their hearts?
This is an interesting one. I'm going to start with the generalizations, but I want to get specific because the question is kind of general and I want to help you. So we're going to get specific. The short version is that in most cultures, it is more socially acceptable for women to open up about how they feel. And that's just the general norm in most cultures. So if you were to say, if a woman opens up about how she feels or expresses how she feels 5 times, maybe 1 out of the 5 times in a normal situation, she might receive some pushback or some type of no, or like something that's unpleasant, negative feedback, we'll say. But for a man, it's going to be the opposite. If a man is open up about how he feels 5 times, maybe 4 out of the 5, he's going to get basically smushed in the face for it. And 1 out of the 5 times he might be accepted about, like it might be okay. So when that's the norm, you should kind of expect that of a man. I would say that's kind of normal.
Yeah, I think for women, growing up when they were young, they were taught to express their emotion in a very healthy environment. They have this support system. And for men, I think it's completely different. They were taught to suppress your emotion or be a man, whatever that means is. Therefore, when they, grow up as an adult, they don't know how to express that. They don't know how to name their emotions. And if you want a man to create that safe space, then create that environment where he's not being shamed, he's not being, judged by their emotion. I think there's a difference between emotions and vulnerability. I think when they are being emotional, they feel this intense feeling. However, when they are being vulnerable, they are acknowledging the feelings that they have and they're taking that responsibility. I think feelings aren't the enemy. I think unprocessed feeling could create friction.
Yeah, I would like to add to that, and I would like to say also for the guys, fellas, we know that there's a dichotomy of that. Like there's how much you can share. So like even in this question, like wanting that, and it's like how much of that do you really want? Because part of what makes I guess what you would say that sense of safety that comes from masculine energy is how well they're able to manage or mitigate or not allow their feelings to spill over in a way that causes you to feel that too much or be too stirred by them, right? So the irony is kind of wanting to know what's going on / too much of what it is might make you scared or might worry you, make him seem less stable. So as a man, if we're trying to be mindful about retaining our relationship with you, there's only so much we would reveal to you anyway. So It's so interesting. I want to go specific. So I'm going to switch from general to specific. The question that was presented doesn't directly apply to somebody like myself. I don't have a challenge with expressing how I feel or my emotions or processing any of that. I have found that it is harder for some of the women that I have met and had conversations with, for them to really face and look at what their feelings really mean or say to them, or how they even themselves may have shame around certain things. Like, it's harder for some of them to do that than it is for me. So I would say it's better to look at that question in a case by case, not men or woman, but like if there's somebody that you're talking to, somebody that you're interested in, it's best to understand why for them in particular it might be difficult for them to open up with you. I think that's something to look at. What in their circumstances, in their life, makes it difficult for them to open up to somebody like you, considering your background and your responses and how you act? I think that's going to be a more useful question to ask, to really create the space where both parties can open up and have better conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's spot on. And not everyone, like you're the rare individual who could just open up easily to women, I think. But in general, I would say maybe 80% of men, they're having a hard time to open up. And that is something that we need to address. So the next question is from Mark. His question was, why do nice guys finish last? And why do men get friend zone when they're too nice? Interesting question. I think for the most part, I think the reason why nice guy finish last is because they don't have that ability to be honest and transparent with their own desire. If they like somebody, they usually hold that back because they're afraid of rejection. Therefore, sometimes women could feel that there's this misalignment on the way he acts, the way he say things. So there's this disingenuous and leads to feeling, not authentic.
Yeah. I would say a good thing I just want to point this out, is the nice versus kind. I think when people are talking about nice to me almost always has like this little tinge of like people pleasing in there. That comes with uncertainty or instability or lack of safety with yourself. I would point to that as that being a big reason right there. Is there's a difference between being nice and kind, and you can be kind and clear, but being nice usually means that there's a little bit of people pleasing, there's a little instability, there's a little uncertainty, like you said, a little shakiness. When it comes to the friend zone thing, that's just funny to me. I have so many opinions on this. I want to just refer to like Sadia Khan on this one. I know some people find Sadia Khan controversial and they're like, no, I don't really like what she got to say. But I'm just going to say, like, for her audience and the people that she's speaking to, this is a question from a man. And I think a woman's opinion who's willing to be straightforward with men would be the best person to answer it. So I would say refer to some of Sadia Khan's content, and she will gladly explain to you about the whole nice guy being friend zone thing. There's a lot of biology and stuff going on at play there. But truly, from my personal perspective, I feel like a nice guy is maybe where you might put a friend, because that might be the same place you might put a female friend. If you're a lady, someone that you know is not going to do too much to hurt your feelings. I think if you're someone that's trustworthy or whatever it is, you might also still be put in a friend spot. But I also think that leads us to like some of the other things we're going to talk about in the next section, which is like how are people even choosing their interest, or who they think they should spend time with. And there's the bell.
All right, let's get back to our second part of this, which is compatibility and choosing a partner.
Okay, compatibility and choosing a partner, like based on our last question. I just want to start with this primer really quick before we even go into the questions. Okay. There's this thing that I like to call, you'll hear this in different forms, like the 4 C's or whatever. I don't believe in 4 C's. I think it's the 5 C's. 5 C's.
Get it, not 5 C's.
When we're talking about compatibility and choosing a partner and all that stuff. So the first C, this is a funny one to me and it shouldn't be first, but I'm going to say first for now. Chemistry. That's one of the first ones.
Come on, it's important that what starts the engine.
I'm holding back my laughter so much.
feelings.
I'm trying to behave. Character, the person's character.
Right.
Connection, not just with that person, but connection with yourself.
Knowing your values.
Compatibility, right? Shared values. How does that work? Where do you guys align? Where is there maybe some potential room for trauma bonding, or maybe not? You know,
bonding.
sometimes you can be compatible like that. People don't know. And then lastly is commitment. And I say lastly, commitment, rightfully so. Okay. So usually people technically with chemistry, they want to skip some steps and they want to go straight to commitment, and then they want to worry about the rest after.
Same thing with courtship. You know, it takes some patience, it takes some time.
Right.
Take through that process if you want your relationship to be healthy and long term.
Right. So let's say that chemistry, let's say maybe the spark, right? Okay, so maybe we don't want to put the spark later in the line. Fine. You want it to be first. I don't agree. But if you want it to be first, then let that spark curiosity.
Right.
Curiosity to find out more about the person.
Right.
Well,
But
start with
the
that.
chemistry, what they're feeling for the most part is anxiety.
Sometimes.
But most of the time, it's triggering their anxiety. Maybe
Sometimes-
they have that anxious attachment style.
Sometimes it's you know, sometimes the spark is chemistry is like it's attraction, right? And I'm sure this is not a rare thing. I know plenty of people besides myself who've experienced this, where it's like you can see that someone is attractive and you can be like, oh, I'm kind of curious about that, whatever. And then you get to know a little bit about the person. You're like, ooh, I'm not attracted anymore.
that's
The
not
attraction
the
is
man.
it's
That's
over.
not
The
the girl.
attraction's over. That's it. It's done. It's done. So
It's an ick.
the ick, right? Oh my gosh.
Well, the ick is not that bad because it's like you saw something, you're like, oh, but the attraction could still occur. You know, it's time process.
Maybe.
But red flag, that could be, and the deal breakers, the ones that lose all the attraction.
Yeah, if you're going too heavy in on the chemistry, you're not paying attention to anything else. You're not using that chemistry to fuel curiosity, to learn more about that person's character. You know, you're missing the boat already. But I just want to put that out there. So again, just super quick primer before we go into the next questions. Again, think about these different elements such as chemistry, character, connection with self and with the other person, right? Let's talk about compatibility, and then of course lastly, commitment.
Commitment is the most important part. Don't
Okay.
skip the middle.
Yeah, don't skip the middle.
All right, so the question is from Giancarlo.
Okay.
His question is, what actually makes two people compatible?
Oh,
do
boy.
opposite attract, or do relationships work better when people share similar values?
This is
Great
interesting.
question.
That's a great question. So, yes, for all of them, and no, for all of them.
Right.
I think that the equation is going to vary. It depends on the people.
I think definitely opposite attracts. I think it definitely works.
Before you continue, why? Opposites attract.
Okay,
Why?
so I believe that most people are into that novelty. However, that personality could actually work. But I think in long-term relationship, I don't think it will last, because personality works with, you know, some couples short term. However, if there is this different principle, core values that they don't have similar, I think that's when it becomes challenging.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to add some little nuance in there. So, if opposites, it depends on where you're opposing or what's
Right.
opposite, right?
Wait, so before you continue your thought, before I forget, I think something that comes to mind is, let's say you're in a basketball team, right? And both of you love basketball. There's similarities in there. You're a team and you are trying to achieve the same goal, which is to win a championship or do the best you can. However, if the one of your partner is not really into basketball, he's into maybe soccer or baseball, then it will be difficult to work things out.
Yeah, maybe. But this goes back to what I was about to say, which
Right.
is it is opposite attracting, and why is it attractive? So like if you're attracted to something that's opposition, what are you really attracted to? And I want you to think about it. Like, are you attracted to the idea of that having the tussle? Or are you attracted to the idea of trying to fight for control? Are you attracted to the novelty, something different? Or is there something that you see in that person that you kind of wish was part of your life? You admire it about that person, but you wish you had it in your life, but you don't really have it in your life. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to get it into your life. Sometimes people don't understand. They end up in whole relationships because they're trying to solve a problem internally or get an answer to something. And they think the other person's got the answer because they see the end fruit. And then sometimes they get in a relationship with that person, they see how that person lives, and they go, oh, but I don't want to live like that. Then you don't want the end fruit that you thought was interesting. So maybe it's time for you to continue figuring out what else you think you need in life. So the whole opposites thing, I think it's relevant to how much opposition, how much discomfort can you handle? Like, give me an example, you said there's going to be some tension. Tension might not matter. If it's basketball day one day and soccer day the other day, and both parties are cool with that, then great. That means you help me win my basketball championship this day. I'll help you win your soccer championship the other day. And you know what? On whatever other day, we are the champions together and we win.
I think the idea is how you're going to work it out as a team. I think being too much of a different, I think just talking to the extreme, I think that could be a problem. However, if it's too similar, exact same copy as you, I think that's going to be boring,
I think not even a measure of boring, honestly. I think beyond boring. I think I would have to ask you, what do you want out of a relationship?
Right.
This question for opposite or whatever, what do you want out of a relationship? That's all that matters. What do you want out of the relationship? Because in reality, that opposing opposites, why is that attractive to you? And then if you want someone that has all this same stuff, why is that? Is it because you do not wish to be challenged in life? You don't want anyone to say anything contrary? Like, that's going to be very hard because you have two different entities with two different backgrounds and two different upbringings. If you find someone exactly like you, that's incredibly difficult. You might as well just date yourself. What's the point of the other person? Why? So
I think of this like, if you date somebody that is completely different, like for example, the culture is completely different, there's no similarity. I think
that's very rare, by the way.
Yeah, it is rare, and that's why I think it's always, not always, but for the most part, the relationship that lasts have so much similarity with the culture, with the background.
Let's do percentages. Let's make this quantifiable. Let's do it. I like quantifiables because it helps people to understand. Okay. If there's a 100% spectrum, what percentage is opposition or differences, and what percentage must be shared, similar?
I think what's a better idea is, you talk about this before. You said that, okay, so I have my own culture, my own background, and my partner has his own culture and background, and why don't we just have a conversation and let's take some of the things that I have and have this shared, new culture that we can cultivate together.
Yeah, that would be ideal, but most people can't do that. So let's go back to the percentages thing so we can answer Giancarlo's question.
So in my own opinion, based on my observation, I believe that people that stick with their own culture, very similar, I think 80% of that will have that long-term, long-lasting relationship.
So 80% the same, 20% different.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's going to be relevant, like you said, for your own opinion. I think that might be a matter of what you're looking for. And the reason why I presented this question that way is because I want whoever is asking this question to really think about what that percentage is for themselves, because that's going to give you a better answer. Okay. You need to understand why you might be attracted to opposite. How much opposition can you actually handle? How much can you tolerate? Like, somebody who is very open to change and growth and how difficult that process is and being challenged constantly versus someone who only wants to be challenged every once in a while, like a rare seasoning, not a weekly seasoning, not a once a month seasoning, like once every few months I want to be challenged, not too much more than that. You need to understand that about yourself, and then you can better understand what that ratio might actually be.
All right, it's about understanding that capacity, what you have
for yourself.
And what you can tolerate.
Yeah, and then you can answer that for yourself.
All right, sweet. All right, we spent some good amount on that question. Good job, Giancarlo. So this next question is from Michael Lobo. How important are money, status, age difference, intellectual connection, and religion?
Did he say how important?
Yeah, how important are the money, the status?
Extremely important. All of it is extremely important.
Yeah, I think for me, I think they are all important, but it's going to be different with different people. Like, it's not all the same. For example, money is really important, right? Because it creates peace, it creates stability, and
It provides options.
exactly. And status, I think there's more for men. You know, they want that pride and age difference.
I'm going to say, so I'm going to talk about, so if we're going to go piece by piece, let's go back and forth on each
Okay,
piece.
okay.
Because I think we have different views on this, and I want us to have the opposition.
Okay, for sure. All right, so with the money, I think that's very important. It creates freedom and stability. I think that money helps to build and create a family if you're somebody who's a family-oriented person. And it's not all about the money, right? I think it's the instability and the stagnation is what turns them off.
Interesting. Does he say, he says important to what? Like important to, what does the question say?
How important are money, status?
Are each of them to what?
That's the question. How important money, status, age difference, intellectual connection, and religion?
In a relationship,
In a
or
relationship,
in the
for sure.
process of dating or courtship or pursuing a relationship? Because they change.
That's true.
It changes.
How about we answer both of them?
Okay, cool. So if we're doing the money one first, money, first off, in the pursuit of versus being in the relationship, there's lots of data and statistics about money being one of the top, I think like top 3 reasons why divorces happen. So financial is one of the top 3 reasons. However, there's a lot more grace when you're maybe in the relationship. I think some people will say vice versa in the dating, but I think it's a little bit different when you start committing, you have some skin in the game. You know, unless there's a bad financial reason to bail out of the relationship early. Usually when you're in a relationship, you might be a little bit more tolerant because you care about the person. But when you don't know the person at all and you can see them negatively impacting like your finances as a man or a woman, you kind of just go, nah, I'm good, I want out. So I would say that being financially stable is actually even more important when you're single than when you're not. But don't
You
get it.
said being more financially stable when you're single.
When you're
It's
trying
more
to
important?
when you're trying to date and pursue, you want to play the courtship game.
Yeah. You don't want to be.
Far more important.
Yeah, I think for the most part, men who are broke and trying to date somebody,
Big mistake.
yeah,
Don't do
I
it.
think they're not in their, their best self.
No, definitely don't do it.
Yeah.
Finances provide options, so options have utility, right? So yeah, finances, big up on the value, very important to relationships, period. Like I said, provides options. And for clarity, I think Vaughn's going to be more reasonable on this. So because I know he's going to be more reasonable, I'm going to push the opposite side because
Let's
I want
go.
you to have the perspective. Perspective, if you don't understand the difference between modern relationships and dating and how just 100 years ago, 120 years ago or so now, it was completely different. Like the idea of arranged marriages or marrying into a certain family to combine resources and things like that, that's super normal for thousands of years. The newer want to be married for love and because I want to enjoy the relationship itself. This luxury stamp that we've placed on relationships and marriages and things like that. Remember, a marriage is still a legally binding enterprise, okay? So don't get it twisted. The law is still involved in that idea. So even though we're on this newer concept, do not forget that coming together still means you guys are going to be intermingling finances. Even if you have your own account, she has her own account, and you guys have an account together, which is just wise, period, in general. I know some people who are very financially well off that they do it like that, and it helps to keep everything safe and out of care and consideration for each other. But just know you are going to be spending money in that, and it is to further your future together. So yes, big up to finances, very important for any relationship, period.
100. All right, so the pride or the status.
You view status as pride, but I don't view it that way. Status, I don't know if that's what he means. I think status, if you're thinking about pride, means you're thinking about status for yourself.
Right.
Status in terms of relationships means how you're viewed by others outside. So here's a good one. You sometimes don't understand how high you are in social status because of your energy and the way you show up in a room. Sometimes you don't even understand that.
All right.
Ladies, if you see a man that's high status in a room, what do you think? Do you not at least see that he's in the room? Does he not get your attention? Now, it doesn't have to be a moment of pride or anything big for him. He could just be like chilling. But if you know that he's the guy in the room, surely you know he's one of the guys in the room, right, ladies? That's status.
Interesting in that perspective.
Yeah, not about how you feel in yourself or anything like that. Nothing about that internal reflection of pride, but status. Like in the room you walk in, do you have status? Are you somebody in that room?
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
If not, you're invisible.
All right, and then the age difference, how important that is. I think
Huge.
that's very important. I think having that gap, it creates distance. I think if the person is not emotionally mature or the level where you at, I think it creates friction. Yeah, I feel like it's just a different stage of life. If you are dating somebody who's like 10, 20 years.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge gap.
Man, that is a huge gap.
That's too big. I'm going to go Jordan Peterson on this one. Jordan Peterson says something like 5 years is a reasonable gap. 10 years in certain circumstances is pushing it, but like 5 years, that's, it's doable. An easy way to look at this is like, if you're somebody who's been living for a few decades, like you can look and you can go, okay, and even if you aren't, you can look at history books and watch old videos. Like there's history available to you. But if you look at how different life was for people in the 80s or 90s or 2000s, 2010s, if you look at how drastically things changed culturally for the environment you grew up in, a 10-year difference is a huge difference in perspective. Something that, like, here's an easy one. I'm a little bit older. I'm not super old yet, but I'm a little bit older. But I remember,
How old are you?
I'm old enough to have not been born with a cell phone in my hand.
Oh, yeah.
And to also see kids who have been born with a cell phone or tablet in their hand. Mm-hmm. And like, I know people who are like, Google, I love Google. I love asking Google for questions and using AI tools and all that. It's great. However, I definitely know and have experience going to find information in a library for myself. And I can say that the perspective of I will have to put in effort to go find this information versus like, why would I ever go look in a library when I can just do it on my phone is a huge difference. And those little things, if you grew up like that, you grew up with that easy access or convenience. Like this goes back to the courtship and dating thing, right? Yeah. If you never had to write a letter to a woman you had a crush on, men, and give it to her unknowing of what could happen. You never had to do a little thing like that when you were young. You never done any like little gestures like that. And you just want to be on the apps and you think swipe, 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 whatever. This is for the younger dudes. You don't go out of your way. That's a huge difference. A lady who might be a little bit older than you, who can remember still when another man, who by the way, he's not in the picture, but he still lives in the mind because he did something sweet or different. There's a courtship gesture that he did that no other man did. So he gets to live in the mind, even if he's not around anymore. And you as a younger man show up and you're not bringing nothing. I mean, you're not bringing no juice to the table. You're not giving her nothing to think about. When you're gone, she's not thinking about you. It's a wrap. Like there's no contest. It's a wrap. You're not there. You don't exist. So I think that understanding that time gap, that difference, it makes a huge difference in the way we subtly see the world. So I think like Jordan Peterson, I think the 5 years is within the same decades, within that same range of understanding. After 10 years, you start to hit a gap where it's like, unless that person is an abnormality,
right? The anomaly.
Yeah, you're most likely running into tough territory.
Yeah, I think that's spot on when it comes to dating somebody who's much younger than you. Like, for example, today's day and age, people are so glued to their social media. They grew up in a TikTok, while the people from the 80s or the 90s, they are somebody who's a complete different species, Like what you mentioned, they go to the library, they actually learn things to... it takes some time, so it creates this differences, and I think that's important.
Cool. What's next?
Next
besides
is
age?
We got intellectual connection.
Intellectual connection. Yeah, essential.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that if you want to be engaged and understood by your partner or whoever it is that you want to start a relationship with, I think you have to approach it in a way, if this person is not into quantum physics or business, and you want to be understood, then that is the part where you have to not label them. Or if you want somebody that will stimulate you intellectually, you have to find somebody that has similar interests as you. But it doesn't have to necessarily find a partner who has similar interests than you, because you can always do that with your coworkers, your friends that have similar interests to you, and you don't need your partner to be this person of have the same interest.
I think that's important to understand, but it's different if like the gap is so much so that it skews the power dynamics, because then you can't respect each other, and without respect you can't have a good connection.
Okay, and the last one we got is religion. I think this is one of the crucial part of how important it is. I think because it changes the lifestyle, the core values that you have, and how you're going to raise your family or your kids.
I would say in the past it was more relevant, and I would say today it's becoming less relevant. And not because I personally feel that for myself in my life. That's my observation. My observation is that I've encountered less people who are, what I would say, for lack of better words, devout to whatever their faith is, and require it to be exactly that for the person they want to live or have their future with. I know that there are still people in the world who operate that way, but I know that it is becoming less common. Maybe it's just because I live in California, so I know it's a lot less people that go to places of worship here. But my observation is that it's becoming less relevant as time goes. But I would say for someone where it does matter, it really does matter.
Right. Yeah. So that concludes the question for Michael. And yeah, they're all important. However, it's not like going to be the same with every individual. They might put religion first as, more important.
Hey everybody, cutting in really quick just to promote First Forum. We're promotional partners with them, and obviously we love their stuff. So my absolute favorite is actually the recovery stuff. So this First Forum Clear Protein right here, rainbow sherbet, hot fire, just tastes like juice. It's absolutely delicious. Vanilla goes good with just about anything. Ignition, mixed with either of these, is gonna help with the muscle repair. Magnesium is a sleepy weepy, help you get that rest. And greens for digestion. Have a shaker, shake it all up. It's delightful. Water is a must, and of course, gear bag if you're a gangster. So if you're interested in purchasing anything from First Forum, please check the link in the description. And now let's get back to the show.
All right, so the next question we got here is from Athena.
Okay.
And she wants to know sexual compatibility. So modern versus traditional perspective. What are your thoughts on that?
Modern versus traditional perspective. That's so interesting. You want to do modern or traditional, and I do the other one?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see about this is I believe like neither of them are really that important. I think it all comes down to emotional safety. So when it comes to modern, yeah, you might have an easy access when it comes to sex, you know what I mean? But when it comes to traditional, maybe there is more restraint. But it all comes down to trust, communication, communicating your needs, and respect.
You know what's interesting about that? Something that just came to mind is I feel like if emotional safety plays a role, right? And we're talking about modern versus traditional. I mean, I guess we're talking about time periods, I suppose. But like, if someone has a more traditional approach and maybe there's more of that restraint, the question becomes, is it restraint because they are intentionally choosing it or the values are there? Maybe, does that mean like they are more or less emotionally safe, or does that mean like acting on the sexual compatibility or that chemistry more quickly means we're trying to feel more emotionally safe because we are less emotionally safe?
Interesting. Yeah, and I think, well, maybe I think some of these people are using that chemistry, that sexual, first day, a one night stand, confuse it to compatibility.
Like that connection helps them to feel like there could be something more going on.
Yeah, instead of like really stepping back and really assess, are we really aligned with our values, with the do we have a vision towards this, or maybe it's just like a one-time thing and that's okay. I think the intention has to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I think the intention has to be there. And I also think that that's kind of a blend of like traditional and modern, what you kind of just said right now. Yeah, I think that, if you, let's say you want to have a more quote unquote traditional approach, like I would say break that down into like, what does that actually mean? Does that mean patience? Does that mean waiting? Does that mean that sexual compatibility is important, but maybe less important because what you're more interested in are the other elements of the relationship? Not meaning it's not important. It's just not high priority right now. And does modern mean like, it's super important right now, so I have to act on it in this moment because I feel it right now? So is that the modern approach? Modern approach being like, yeah, dating apps and hooking up and whatever. Like, I would say sexual compatibility probably matters more then, since that seems to be the focus. And then for traditional, maybe it can be a lower priority. It doesn't mean it's not important. It just means lower priority. Priorities are time sensitive.
Right.
Not always importance, organized by importance.
Which one are you leaning more towards? Modern or traditional?
Myself?
Yes.
Oh, we can let it cook. Slow simmer, no rush,
Okay.
no rush. There's so many different layers or ways to play that, and I do believe that building up the tension, I do believe there's value in that. Like I said in a previous answer, like some people don't know what it's like to not have instant gratification because they grew up with instant gratification. But I know what it's like to where before there was Google and I wanted answers, I had to go to the library, find the book, and look for the answer. So like writing a letter, thinking about how I'm going to approach a woman, being very intentional. I grew up with that, and then I was able to have access to instant gratification. So I could do, not instant gratification, because that's just, my brain just goes bad automatically. But I could do a little bit of modern in terms of being reasonable and understanding, but I do have more of a traditional approach. I do believe in taking time because I want to make sure our connection is right before there's any engagement like that. Because that's, I think people misunderstand how much you really intertwine with somebody when you go there.
Yeah, I think it's completely different when it comes to someone who you really have this connection compared to just like, you just meet up, and I believe it's just like completely different experience.
100%, absolutely.
Yeah, this man is ancient.
OG.
Had to go to the library, seek for an answer.
That's it. If you want to know, you got to go find them answers.
100. Well, I think that sums up all the question for part 1.
All right.
And that is it for part 1. We'll go on to part 2.
All right, stay tuned and we'll see you in the next episode. Have a great day.